Guys, this is GS Luke DFS bringing you guys my preview for the 2021 Honda Classic. I am absolutely stoked after last week's Players Championship, which I had the pleasure of attending for all 4 days. And yes, we got JT Wright as our winner last week. He was our spend up option, somebody that I told you guys to take some bets on, to place a little bit of cheddar on, and he came through for those of you that did. I ended up following him for pretty much all 4 days when he was playing. He started off horribly and was over par. I don't know if you guys know this, but midway through his round on Friday, he was actually 2 strokes over the cut line at a point where I pretty much thought I had made a mistake. He wasn't making any putts. He was striking the ball well, I will say. But if you miss the cut, it doesn't matter how well you're striking it. He ended up birdieing, I think, 4 of his last 5 holes, if I remember correctly, shooting 8 under the next day, and the rest is history. You guys know the deal. So great bounce back for JT there. It was super fun to see, and overall it was great to have the crowds back there at TPC Sawgrass. It was super high energy. Everyone was really having a good time, and I can't wait for the Honda Classic this week because I'll be there too. So with no further ado, let's get into the course preview. Now getting into the course, we'll be playing PGA National this week, the championship course up in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida. Not too far from where I'm from, actually. So the course is a par 70, a little bit different than what we've been seeing over the last month or so. And it's 7,125 yards, which is very similar to some of the courses that we've seen recently. But because it is a par 70, it's going to play much, much longer than some of the courses that we've seen. Also, the course has a ton of dog legs, which means that we're going to see a lot more distance added there as well. It is a Bermuda grass type on the fairways and the greens and everything like that, something that you typically see on a Florida course. And it is designed by Tim Fazio, who is notorious for making some of the most devilish designs. Maybe not quite as difficult as a Pete Dye design, like we saw last week at TPC Sawgrass, but this course, if we look at the scoring average, plays harder than TPC Sawgrass. It has the hardest scoring average over the last 10 years on tour, with the average cut being 3 to 5 over par, sometimes even higher when the winds get up. And that's usually because it plays long for a par 70. The rough is difficult and the hazards are very penal. And just like TPC Sawgrass, it has water hazards on every single hole. So that means there's a lot of volatility that comes into play, and we'll be embracing that volatility on weeks like these. So it takes a complete game to win, as you can imagine. You have to be accurate off the tee. You have to be long enough to reach these greens with a reasonable wedge. You have to make your putts, and if you get into trouble, you have to be able to get out of it. So you can't have a hole in your game. So just like last week, I'm going to be looking for well-rounded golfers and golfers that are coming in great form. Because if you have a weakness in your game and it's evident in the statistics over the last few months, it's not likely to disappear at a course that challenges you like a Honda Classic will. So with that being said, let's talk about some of the key stats I'll be weighing this week and why they're important. First up for the key stats this week is shots gained approach, which is very typical, but it's extremely important this week nonetheless. It comes in ranked number 10 out of 50 on the PGA Tour in terms of its importance, and that's easy to imagine at a course as difficult as PGA National is. In short, it's mostly because you have to stay out of a lot of the hazards. There's water, sand traps around every single green, and if you aren't precise with your shots, you're often looking at a bogey, even double bogey if you can't get your putt in. So having an ability to be precise and to hit it on the right tier of the green is also important as well. These are tiered greens at PGA National. They're pretty large actually, but if you hit it on the wrong tier of the green, you're pretty much in the same scoring average as someone who's chipping from off the green. You're going to be able to hit it close. You're probably not going to be able to sink the putt. So having that precise approach play is going to be the number one key stat this week by far. The next stat is distance off the tee, which comes in at a 30th rank out of 50 in terms of importance, making it a little bit less than average important, but still, distance is always a boost to a player's game, and I think that's why you see it coming up as the second key stat. Number 3 this week is going to be accuracy off the tee, coming in at 32nd out of 50 on tour. Again, not a very important stat in perspective, but it makes sense. If you're spraying it off the tee at PGA National, you're hitting it on the water, you're making a lot of double, triple bogeys, and you're likely not making the cut. So None of those three stats are surprises there, but the main takeaway is that approach play is going to be paramount this week. It's going to be the thing that I'm focusing and hunkering down on the most, and it'll be apparent when you see some of my player targets here in a second. Before I get into those, though, I'd like to talk just some strategy notes. So first of all, I'm just not going to be taking last week's form too seriously. I understand that there's going to be a lot of sticker shock given a lot of the prices of a lot of golfers this week, and I think that is very reasonable. Last week, a lot of golfers popped that we haven't seen pop in a long time, and that's because of the water hazards. 9 of the top 17 priced golfers last week missed the cut. That is ridiculous. Normally, we're seeing 16 out of 17 or even 17 out of 17 making the cut on a regular basis. Over half of them missed it last week. Do I expect that to happen this week? Probably. We're dealing with a course with very similar water hazards, very similar volatility when it comes to winners, past winners, and whatnot. So I'm just not going to be taking that form too seriously, and I'm going to understand that this week it could very much go the other way for any golfer. The next thing that I'm considering this week is that I'm going to leave money on the table. With this much randomness, with this much volatility, it is highly, highly unlikely that the winning lineup or the optimal lineup uses all $50,000. It's very likely that you're dealing with somewhere around the 49,000 to 50, I'd say 49.5 range in the optimal. So I'll be limiting my lineups to spending just $49,500, maybe even a little bit less. I'll have to see how my crunches are running out. But that's just to take advantage of that volatility, and also to make sure that I'm not worried about ownership as much. There's going to be some great plays this week that I frankly don't want to stay off of. I'm going to be playing plenty of them and making sure that I take advantage of that volatility by limiting my salary cap is going to allow me to do so without duplicating my lineup 1,000 times. And the last thing that I am taking into consideration this week is past success. I'm going to be boosting that a little bit. Typically, this field is a little bit stronger than it is this week. So people that have had success given those stronger fields, I'm going to take that even more so into consideration. I'm talking people like Brendan Steele that have multiple top 5s in those stronger field events. In a weaker field like this, he could very well finish first, given a very similar performance, given his shots gained and whatnot. So those are some of the strategy notes for this week. Next, let's talk about some of my core plays. Now getting into my core 5 plays for this week, it is important to note, as I just said, that the field is a lot weaker. So we're dealing with a much more condensed player pool of the top players. There's actually only 2 top 30 players in this field. That's Sungjae Im and Daniel Berger. But it is important to note that there's going to be a huge advantage if you are someone that follows a lot of PGA Tour golf. You're going to understand the games of a lot of people down the board that a lot of other casuals, we'll call them, don't see very much, and I expect that to give you an edge this week. So with that being said, my spend up option for this week is going to be Daniel Berger, coming in at $10,800, the second highest priced golfer, and probably going to be the most highly owned golfer this week as well, but I'm okay with that. So Daniel Berger is a great fit this week. He gains all over the board. He's notorious for that. He gains in all 4 major statistical categories. The only issue last week at the Players' Championship was that his putter didn't cooperate. He lost shots on the greens the first 2 days. Those last 2 days he was much closer to a neutral putter, but he's still top 10. That's how good and complete his game is. It was probably the quietest top 10 that we've had in a long time. And he historically putts well on the Bermuda surface, which makes it even more strange. If he has that putter come back this week and he gains in the other 3 categories like he did at TPC Sawgrass, he's hoisting the trophy. It's not going to be close. He'll probably run away with it. I don't expect that to happen, but I could definitely see it happen. So again, he will see ownership. I'm okay eating the chalk on him this week. He's a great course fit. He's been trending in the right direction. He just needs that putter to turn around like it normally is for him. He's not one of those guys that is historically a bad putter and you're kind of preying on it to turn around. We'll have a couple of those here in a second. Those are my favorite golfers to play. But Daniel Berger is historically a great putter. So if he just gets back to even a shell of himself, he's going to have a good week. And he's going to be somebody that I play in a majority of my lineups. I don't typically play players in more than 50% of my lineups, but Berger will likely buck that trend this week. My second man in for this week is going to be Brendan Steele, a little bit farther down the board at $8,700 than my normal second man in, but it makes sense given that I'm going to be leaving a lot of salary on the board this week. So Brendan Steele's coming in great form. He made the cut at the Players, was at one point in the top 15, ended up fading down the stretch to a 29th place finish, but given the field, that's a great finish for Brendan Steele. He's also got great course history here. I alluded to that before. He has 2 top 5s, 2 fourth place finishes, and also a top 15 finish out of his last 4 starts. So great course history there, and that's given the stronger field strength. So given that this year we're going to not see as many top end golfers, maybe that 4th place finish is the 1st place finish this year. Who knows? So he's historically great with his irons. He's accurate off the tee. I would say his one major weakness would be his distance off the tee. But we saw distance was in the bottom half of the of key stats in terms of importance this week, off the tee, that is. So his weakness seems to be nullified this week. He's coming in great form. He has great course history, and he is a good course fit just given his profile. He's a great ball striker. He's good around the greens, and he gains off the tee at the very least. So I love Brendan Steele this week. I think $8,700 will keep his ownership a little bit lower than it should be. People are going to see that price on Brendan Steele, who's normally like a $7,000 golfer, and go, oh no, I can't do that. But he's a great fit. He's checking all the boxes. I'll have plenty of him this week as my second man in. My bread and butter play for this week, the guy you should have in most of your lineups as a staple per se, would be Keegan Bradley, coming in at $8,400. In short, his irons are scorching. I mean, I watched him for a good amount at the Players Championship, and he was hitting balls to 5-7 feet almost every hole. At one point, I was looking over at the people next to me most of the time, just like, what in the world? Like, this guy is all world. His issue is that he missed a good amount of those putts. I saw him miss about 5 to 10 putts he could have made from less than 10 feet. And he missed more than he made, but he still ended up finishing in the top 30 last week, which is outstanding, honestly. He historically putts his best on Bermuda. It's still not a positive putter, but he putts 0.2 strokes per round above his baseline on Bermuda, which is helpful at least. And he does have poor course history, which I do think is going to keep a lot of people off of him. He hasn't made the cut here, but given his profile, I think he should make the cut. I think that if we look back at his past performances, I haven't dug into them too much yet. It's a little bit early on in the week. I would assume that he just missed the cut, and a lot of that was due to field strength. You're dealing with a much stronger field in previous years than you will this year, and I think given the field strength, he's a very safe bet to make the cut. His irons have been in much better shape than they have been in past years as well. He's gaining 0.52 strokes per round on approach. I mean, that is absolutely outstanding. He's one of the best on tour since the restart, and I expect him to play well this week. It's crazy to say, but I think he's a safe play this week. I think he's a safe option to make the cut with high upside if he turns that putter around. So I have plenty of him this week. He'll be a staple in my lineups. Again, if he goes out and he putts terrible this week, he could put up another top 30 finish like he did last week, or even better given the field strength, which I would be just fine with. So that's my bread and butter play for this week. My value play for this week is going to be Henrik Norlander, coming in at $7,400, who absolutely killed everyone who played him last week. He missed the cut horribly. He shot 8 over his first day. Not much better his second day. He shot a couple under, but all things were lost after that 8 over. He sprayed the ball off the tee. He sprayed it with his irons. He didn't really do anything well at TPC Sawgrass. So you'd say, well, why do you want to play him this week? Well, historically, he's not that kind of player. He's historically very accurate off the tee. He's a top 10% of the whole tour, not just this field, in terms of accuracy off the tee. And he's been gaining 0.42 strokes per round on approach this year, even given that horrible performance last week, which dropped him from a 0.75 strokes per round on approach to a 0.42. So I'm looking at his baseline. He very, very much so fits the course. And because of his performance last week, I expect almost no one to want to play him. I played him last week. He killed me, but I am 100% okay going back to him. It was a high volatility event that could have happened to anyone, and it did happen to a lot of really good golfers. Terrell Hatton, all the Xander, all those guys that missed the cut that were way up the board. But again, it's high risk, high reward, and I think that's what you're looking for in a week like this. So I'll be playing plenty of Henrik Norlander as a value play. For my diamond in the rough play this week, it is going to be Chez Reavie, coming in at $7,000 here on DraftKings. While he hasn't played the event before, he is somebody that should fit the course very well. He's gaining 0.55 strokes per round on approach this year, which is one of the tops in the field. He's not the longest off the tee, but he is historically accurate off the tee. He's known for hitting a lot of hybrids, a lot of 3-woods off the tee, driver from time to time, and because of that, he's very accurate. He is very good with his long irons. That's how he gains all those strokes, which is pretty atypical if you ask me. Normally, good iron players benefit from a good off the tee game. They're hitting the ball far down there in the fairway, and they have short approach shots, and as such, they're able to hit it closer. Chez Reavie does it with his long irons. He has no issues hitting 4 and 5 irons into greens and hitting them very close, which I love for a course like a Honda Classic, which is going to play long. It's going to have a lot of long par 4s, and it makes approach play a priority. So he fits the course. He's not coming in the best form, especially with his putter. He's been leaking strokes with his putter, but just like JT last week, he has that one thing going wrong for him. For JT, it was that driver. For Chez Reavie, it's his putter. If Chez turns around the putter, he could absolutely win this week. So I love Chez Reavie as a flyer. He's high risk, high reward, just like Norlander, but he's farther down the board. You're not giving too much ownership to him. I'll be in the 15 to 20% range just to get enough of him to make it worth it. And if he ends up paying off, I'm going to be very happy. So Chez Reavie is my diamond in the rough and somebody that I think is worth a flyer. That's all for this week's preview, guys. As always, subscribe if you'd like to see more content, and feel free to check out my videos on my channel covering the NBA, MMA, and NFL coming very soon. So look forward to the Honda Classic this weekend. Hopefully we bring home a winner just like last week, and again, good luck, guys.